Commander Jack Reed pressed his hand against the cold glass of the observation deck. The stars looked the same as they always did, cold, distant, and uncaring. But today it was different. Today, those stars might hold humanity's last chance. "Sir, you need to see this." Tom Miller, the chief engineer of the survey vessel Pathfinder, pointed at the main screen. His usually steady hands shook slightly. Jack turned away from the window and looked at the display. What he saw made no sense. Floating silently among the asteroids was a ship, a massive warship of clearly human design. "That's impossible," Jack whispered. "We don't have anything that big in this sector." Lisa Gray, the team's historian, shook her head as she studied the readings. "We don't have anything that big anywhere. This design, I've never seen anything like it." The year was 2783, and humanity was losing a war. The swarm had appeared 3 years ago, insect-like aliens that moved across the galaxy like a plague of locusts. They consumed everything in their path: planets, moons, asteroids, and people, especially people. Earth's outer colonies had fallen first, then the inner colonies. Last month, they had lost contact with Mars. Earth itself was now surrounded by the last remaining ships of the Human Defense Force, and Jack's small team was out here, at the edge of human space, looking for resources to keep the fight going for just a little longer. "Run a full scan," Jack ordered. "I want to know everything about that ship." Tom worked quickly at his station. Power readings are minimal, but there's something there. Life support is functioning at the lowest possible level. Weapon systems are dormant but intact. He looked up with wide eyes. "Sir, this technology is beyond anything we have. The energy signatures don't match any known human designs." "But it is human," Lisa insisted. She pointed to markings visible on the hull. "Those are Earth military symbols, but very old ones. I think this ship might be from the lost century." Jack felt a chill run down his spine. The lost century was the period after the Third World War, when most of Earth's records were destroyed. What little they knew suggested it was a time of rapid technological advancement, before the great collapse that had set humanity back by decades. "Are you saying we're looking at a ship that's at least 300 years old?" Jack asked. Lisa nodded slowly. "At least, and if it has technology we no longer understand." The three of them shared a look. They all knew what that meant. If this ship contained lost technology, it might give humanity an edge against the swarm. "Suit up," Jack ordered. "We're going aboard." The journey to the derelict vessel took less than an hour. As they approached in their shuttle, the true size of the ship became clear. It was at least twice as large as the biggest modern battleship. "I'm picking up a docking bay," Tom said. "Looks like the doors are partially open. We should be able to get inside." The shuttle slipped through the gap in the massive hangar doors. Inside, the bay was dark except for a few emergency lights that still functioned after centuries of abandonment. Their shuttle's lights revealed rows of fighter craft, unlike any design they had ever seen. "Those look advanced," Lisa whispered through the comm in her suit, "even by our standards." They landed near the inner doors. After checking that the hangar had atmosphere, thin but breathable, they exited the shuttle. "Stay close," Jack said, "weapon ready. We don't know what's waiting for us." The ship was silent as they made their way deeper inside. Emergency lighting activated as they moved, as if the vessel was slowly waking up after a long sleep. "Main computer should be on the bridge," Tom said, following the schematics on his tablet. "If we can access it, we might learn what this ship is and why it's here." The corridors were wide and designed for efficiency rather than comfort. Everything about the ship spoke of its purpose: war. After 20 minutes of walking and riding silent elevators, they reached what appeared to be the bridge. Unlike the rest of the ship, here the lights came on at full strength as they entered. "Welcome aboard the UES Prometheus," a voice said suddenly, making them all jump. A holographic figure appeared at the center of the bridge, A man in an unfamiliar military uniform. I am the ship's artificial intelligence interface. Authorization required for full systems activation. State nature of emergency. Jack stepped forward. I am Commander Jack Reed of the Human Defense Force. Earth and her colonies are under attack by an alien species we call the Swarm. We're on the brink of extinction. The hologram seemed to process this information. Scanning external databases. Confirmation received. Threat assessment. Extinction level. Activating Lazarus protocol. Suddenly, the bridge lit up completely. Screens came to life all around them, showing ship systems powering up. What's the Lazarus protocol? Lisa asked. The Lazarus protocol is the final contingency plan, the AI replied. The Prometheus was built as humanity's insurance policy. If all other defenses failed against the predicted alien threat, this vessel and its crew would serve as the last line of defense. Crew? Jack asked, looking around the empty bridge. In answer, the AI directed them to a sealed door at the back of the bridge. When it opened, they saw rows of cryopods stretching into the distance. Inside each pod was a person, sleeping peacefully, unaware that centuries had passed. The crew of the Prometheus has been in suspended animation since the ship was launched in 2435, the AI explained. They are the best scientists, engineers, and soldiers of their time, equipped with knowledge and technology that was later lost. Why? Lisa asked. Why hide away your most advanced ship and best people? Because our scientists predicted the coming of the swarm over 300 years ago, the AI said. We knew humanity's initial defenses would likely fail. The Prometheus was designed to be forgotten, hidden away until it was truly needed. The first of the cryopods began to open with a hiss of escaping air. Inside, a man with graying hair opened his eyes for the first time in centuries. Captain Robert Wells, the AI announced. Commander of the Prometheus. The man looked around in confusion, then focused on Jack and his team. How long? He asked, his voice hoarse from centuries of disuse. 348 years, Captain, the AI answered. And humanity needs you now. As Wells struggled to sit up, alarms began to sound throughout the ship. The AI's hologram flickered. Warning. Swarm vessels detected approaching this sector. Estimated time to arrival. 6 hours. Jack looked at Wells, then at the rest of the crew, still waking from their long sleep. These people from the past were now their best hope for a future. We need to get this ship operational, Jack said, and we need to do it fast. Captain Robert Wells stood shakily on the bridge of the Prometheus, his body still adjusting after centuries in cryo-sleep. Around him, his crew was slowly waking up, helped by Jack's team. 30 men and women chosen from Earth's best, now strangers in a time they were never meant to see. 348 years, Wells repeated, his voice stronger now. Everyone we knew is long dead. Yes, sir, the ship's AI confirmed. But your mission remains active. The swarm threat has arrived as predicted. Wells looked at the modern humans with narrowed eyes. Our orders were clear. Protect Earth at all costs. Jack stepped forward. Captain, things have changed. Humanity has spread to hundreds of worlds. The swarm isn't just attacking Earth. They're consuming every human colony they find. Hundreds of worlds. A woman's voice came from behind them. Anna Davis, the ship's tactical officer, had joined them on the bridge. Her short blonde hair was still wet from the revival process. We barely had a dozen colonies when we went to sleep. A lot has changed, Lisa said gently, but much has been lost too. After the Third World War, there was a period we call the Lost Century. Most records from your time were destroyed. Wells exchanged looks with Anna. Jack could see the pain in their eyes as they realized that not only were their loved ones gone, but even their memory had been erased from history. Captain, the AI interrupted. Swarm vessels will reach our position in 5 hours, 23 minutes. Recommend immediate activation of primary systems. Wells straightened his back. Whatever he was feeling, he pushed it aside. Status of the ship. All critical systems functional. Weapon systems at 92% capacity. Dimensional drive requires calibration. Tom's head snapped up. Dimensional drive. What's that? Anna smiled slightly. That's why they'll never see us coming. Over the next 3 hours, the two crews worked together to prepare the ship. More of the ancient crew woke from cryo-sleep, including Dr. Mark Evans, the chief medical officer, and Susan Ford, the ship's engineer. They were all disoriented and shocked to learn how much time had passed, but they were professionals. They had a job to do. Tom followed Susan through the ship's massive engine room, asking question after question. So this dimensional drive, it lets you travel faster than light. Susan shook her head. No, that's what the standard FTL drive is for. The dimensional drive does something else entirely. She led him to a sealed chamber at the heart of the engine room. Inside was a sphere of swirling blue energy, contained within layers of transparent barriers. It phases the ship between dimensions, she explained. In simple terms, it can make the Prometheus exist partially outside normal spacetime. We can see and attack the enemy, but they can't fully see or attack us. Tom stared at the sphere in awe. That's impossible. The energy requirements alone would be massive. Susan finished for him. Yes, that's why no one could replicate it after us. The materials needed are extremely rare. We had to strip entire asteroids of certain elements to build this drive. Tom's face fell. And we'd need those same elements to repair it. Susan nodded grimly. Yes, and I'm guessing they're still rare in your time. Rarer, Tom confirmed. The swarm consumes everything, including the asteroids and moons where those elements are found. On the bridge, Jack and Wells were locked in an argument about strategy. We need to join the main fleet, Jack insisted. Earth needs every ship it can get. Wells shook his head. That's exactly what we can't do. The Prometheus was built to operate alone. If the swarm learns what we can do, they'll adapt. They always adapt. How do you know that? You've never fought them, haven't we? Wells pulled up an image on the main screen. A detailed scan of a swarm ship. We call them the Devourers in our time. Our scientists detected their approach centuries before they reached human space. We built the Prometheus specifically to fight them. Jack stared at the image. But why hide the ship? Why not build a fleet of them? Resources, Anna explained, joining the conversation. The technology in this ship couldn't be mass-produced, and our leaders believe that if the swarm encountered our best weapons too early, they would evolve counters before we could build enough to matter. So they sacrifice your time, your lives. Lissa asked, horrified. We volunteered, Wells said quietly, to be humanity's last line of defense, to be forgotten until we were needed most. The ship's alarms blared suddenly. Multiple swarm vessels detected, the AI announced. They have altered course. A human colony is under attack. Colony designation, New Haven. Population, approximately 800,000. Wells looked at Jack. How far? 20 minutes at top speed, Jack answered. But if we go there, we reveal ourselves to the swarm. Wells was silent for a moment. Then he turned to Anna. Battle stations. Prepare all weapons. Program a jump to New Haven. Captain, Anna said cautiously, our orders were to protect Earth specifically. Wells looked around at his crew, people who had given up everything they knew to serve a future they would never see, and at Jack's team, desperate but determined. Earth has changed, Wells said. Humanity has changed. But our mission remains the same. Ensure human survival. He turned back to the controls. We fight for all of humanity now, not just one world. The Prometheus arrived at New Haven with a flash of light. The colony was a small settlement on a rocky moon, surrounded by swarm ships. On the surface, fires were already burning as the aliens began their consumption. Targeting systems online. Anna reported. Dimensional drive at 70% capacity. That will have to do, Wells said. Engage the drive. Bring us to partial phase. Target the 3 largest swarm ships first. The air around the Prometheus shimmered as the dimensional drive activated. The ship seemed to flicker, becoming semi-transparent. Fire main batteries, Wells ordered. Beams of energy lashed out from the Prometheus, cutting through the first swarm ship as if it were made of paper. The alien vessel split apart, its pieces tumbling into space. Second target, Anna called. Firing. 2 more swarm ships exploded before the aliens realized they were under attack. The remaining ships turned to face the new threat, but their weapons passed through the Prometheus as if it were a ghost. They can't touch us, Jack whispered in amazement. Not while we're phased, Wells confirmed. But we can only maintain this state for short periods. The strain on the drive is too great. The Prometheus continued its attack, moving through the swarm fleet like an avenging spirit. Each shot found its mark, while enemy fire passed harmlessly through the phased ship. In less than 30 minutes, it was over. The swarm ships were destroyed or retreating. New Haven was saved. As the Prometheus returned to normal phase, the crew erupted in cheers. They had won their first battle. But Wells and Jack exchanged knowing looks. This was just the beginning. Sir, the communications officer called out. We're receiving transmissions from New Haven. They're asking who we are. Tell them, Wells said after a moment's thought. Tell them the Prometheus has returned, and we've come to take back what belongs to humanity. As the message was sent, Jack looked at the ship's systems. The dimensional drive was damaged from the battle. Power levels were fluctuating, and they had used nearly a quarter of their ammunition. One battle won, but the war for humanity's survival had just begun. Word of the mysterious ship that saved New Haven spread quickly. The Prometheus became a symbol of hope for the scattered human forces, a ghost ship that appeared from nowhere, destroyed the swarm, and vanished again. Admiral Wilson is demanding we join the main fleet, Jack said, showing Captain Wells the message they had received. They stood in the Prometheus's war room, looking at a map of human space. There weren't many human-controlled systems left. And I keep telling you that's exactly what we can't do, Wells replied, his voice tired but firm. The Prometheus works best alone. We strike, we disappear. The moment we join the fleet, we become a target. Anna nodded in agreement. The swarm adapts quickly. Every engagement we have gives them more data. They're already trying to track our dimensional shifts. Tom and Susan entered the war room, both looking exhausted. They had been working non-stop to repair the dimensional drive since the battle at New Haven. We've got it stable again, Susan reported, but the damage is worse than I thought. We need to replace several key components. What do we need? Wells asked. Dimensional crystals, Tom answered. The same rare materials used to build the original drive. We might find them in certain types of asteroids, but the swarm is consuming those same resources, Jack finished. That's why they target mining colonies first. Wells sighed. How many more jumps can we make with the drive in its current condition? 3, maybe 4 full combat engagements, Susan estimated. After that, the risk of drive failure increases dramatically. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what that meant. Without the dimensional drive, the Prometheus lost its greatest advantage. Then we make them count, Wells decided. Anna, show me the swarm command structure. What have we learned about their communication network? Anna brought up a new display. The swarm operates as a hive mind, but it's not completely unified. They have command nodes, larger ships that coordinate the smaller ones in each sector. If we take out these command nodes, Jack began, we disrupt their entire attack pattern. Wells finished. Exactly. We don't need to destroy every swarm ship. We just need to cut off the head. The plan was taking shape when the ship's AI interrupted. Emergency transmission from the Arcturus system. Swarm high ship detected approaching the human colonies there. Everyone turned to the main screen. The image showed a massive swarm vessel, at least 10 times larger than any they had encountered before. "That's not just a command node," Anna said quietly. "That's a primary hive ship. It carries millions of swarm units and can consume an entire planet's resources in days." "How many people in the Arcturus system?" Wells asked. 3 populated worlds," Jack answered. "Total population around 5 billion. Wells looked at Susan. "Will the drive hold for this?" She hesitated. "It's risky, but yes. We should be able to handle one major engagement." "Then prepare for jump to Arcturus," Wells ordered. "All hands to battle stations." The Prometheus arrived at the edge of the Arcturus system. The high ship was already approaching the outermost planet, with hundreds of smaller swarm vessels surrounding it. "That thing is massive," Lisa whispered, staring at the scans. "How can we possibly stop it?" "We can't," Wells admitted. "Not alone. But we don't have to." He pointed to another part of the system, where ships were gathering. "The human fleet is here. Admiral Wilson must have ordered every remaining warship to defend Arcturus." "It's still not enough," Anna said, studying the tactical display. "Even with us, we're outnumbered 10 to 1. "Then we need to be smarter," Wells said. "Jack, open a channel to Admiral Wilson's flagship." Admiral Karen Wilson appeared on screen, her face showing surprise at seeing Wells. "So the rumors are true. A ghost ship from the past." "No time for explanations, Admiral," Wells said. "We need to coordinate our attack. The Prometheus has technology your ships don't, but we need your fleet to keep the smaller swarm ships busy." Wilson's eyes narrowed. "Why should I trust you?" "Because New Haven is still standing," Jack cut in. "Because this ship has already proven what it can do. And because we're all dead if we don't work together." Wilson studied them for a moment, then nodded. "What's your plan?" The battle began as the swarm noticed the human fleet approaching. The smaller alien ships moved to intercept, while the massive high ship continued toward the planets. "Human fleet engaging the swarm escorts," Anna reported. "Our window opens in 3 minutes. Dimensional drive at full power," Susan called from her station. "Ready on your command." Wells looked around the bridge at his ancient crew and their new allies from the future. "This is what we were built for. This is why we slept for centuries. Let's remind the swarm why humans should never be underestimated." The Prometheus accelerated forward, its outline beginning to shimmer as the dimensional drive activated. The ship phased partially out of normal space, becoming ghost-like. "Releasing drone swarm," Anna announced. Hundreds of small fighter drones launched from the Prometheus, each one sharing the ship's phasing ability. They spread out in a web pattern, surrounding the high ship. "Admiral Wilson's fleet has engaged the swarm escorts," the communications officer reported. "They're drawing them away from the high ship as planned." "Now," Wells ordered, "full power to weapons. Target the high ship's primary sensor array." The Prometheus and its drones attacked simultaneously. Beams of energy cut through the high ship's outer shell, targeting key systems identified by Anna's tactical analysis. The high ship responded, firing massive energy weapons. Most passed harmlessly through the phased Prometheus, but a few found their mark as the ship briefly returned to normal space to fire its weapons. "Hull breach on Deck 7. Someone shouted. "Emergency teams responding." "Drive stability at 64% and dropping," Susan warned. "We can't maintain phase for much longer." Wells gripped his chair as the ship shook under another hit. "Continue the attack. Target their propulsion systems next." The battle raged for nearly an hour. The human fleet fought valiantly against the swarm escorts, while the Prometheus and its drones continued their assault on the high ship. Finally, a series of explosions rippled across the high ship's surface. "Their main power core is destabilizing," Anna reported, a note of triumph in her voice. "They're losing control." Wells turned to the communications officer. Tell Admiral Wilson to pull back her ships. The high ship is going to. He never finished the sentence. The high ship exploded in a blinding flash, the shockwave hitting the Prometheus with tremendous force. When the crew picked themselves up off the floor, half the bridge systems were offline. Smoke filled the air, and emergency alarms wailed throughout the ship. Damage report, Wells called out, wiping blood from a cut on his forehead. Dimensional drive severely damaged. Susan replied through the static of a damaged comm system. Multiple hull breaches, weapon systems at 30% capacity. Jack helped Lisa to her feet and looked at the tactical display. The remaining swarm ships were in disarray, being picked off by Admiral Wilson's fleet. "We did it," he said in disbelief. "We actually did it." Wells nodded, but his expression remained grim. "We won the battle. But at what cost?" The casualty reports began coming in. Several crew members were dead, including Dr. Mark Evans, who had been caught in an explosion while helping wounded crew members. As the Prometheus limped away from the battlefield, the reality of their situation became clear. They had struck a major blow against the swarm, but their ship was badly damaged. The dimensional drive that gave them their advantage was barely functioning, and somewhere out there, the main swarm force was learning, adapting, and preparing for their next encounter with the ship that had emerged from the past. The Prometheus drifted silently through space, far from any star system. After the battle at Arcturus, Admiral Wilson had provided coordinates to this hidden location, an abandoned mining outpost in an unnamed system, where the remaining human forces gathered to repair and regroup. In the ship's medical bay, Captain Wells sat on an examination table while a doctor checked the burns on his arm. "The radiation damage is spreading," the doctor said quietly. "It's affecting your internal organs now." Wells nodded, his face showing no surprise. "How long?" "Weeks, maybe a month." The doctor hesitated. "Sir, if we had better medical facilities." "We don't," Wells cut him off. "And you know as well as I do that this is happening to all of us from the original crew. The cryo chambers were damaged long before we were found." The doctor couldn't argue with that. The centuries-long sleep had taken its toll. The radiation that had leaked into the cryo chambers during their long wait was slowly killing the original crew members. Wells pulled his sleeve down over the burns. "Don't tell the others yet. We have work to do." In the engine room, Tom and Susan worked side by side on the damaged dimensional drive. The heart of the device, the swirling blue sphere, now flickered and pulsed erratically. "If we reroute power through these conduits," Tom suggested, pointing to his diagram, "we might be able to stabilize it enough for one more jump." Susan studied his work. "That could work, but it's not enough. We need those dimensional crystals." "What exactly do these crystals do?" Tom asked. "You never fully explained." Susan was quiet for a moment, as if deciding how much to share. "They don't just let us phase between dimensions. With the right configuration, they can create a dimensional rift, a tear in the fabric of reality." Tom stared at her. "Are you saying the drive is actually a weapon?" "It was always meant to be both," Susan admitted. "A way to travel undetected, yes, but also a last resort weapon against the swarm." "Why haven't you used it that way?" "Because creating a rift that size would destroy the ship too," Susan explained. "It was intended as a suicide option if all else failed." Their conversation was interrupted when Jack entered the engine room. "Admiral Wilson is calling a war council. She wants both of you there." The war room was crowded with officers from the Prometheus and several other ships. Admiral Wilson stood at the head of the table, her face grim. "Earth has fallen," she announced without preamble. "The swarm overwhelmed our defenses 12 hours ago. They're consuming the planet's resources as we speak." A heavy silence fell over the room. Jack thought of the blue oceans and green continents he had seen in pictures. Earth, humanity's birthplace, now being devoured by the alien horde. "What about evacuation ships?" someone asked. "Some got away," Wilson answered. "They're heading to the outer colonies, but the swarm is pursuing. At the current rate, they'll reach every remaining human settlement within weeks. Wells looked around the room. Then we strike now. Hit their main neural cluster. Cut off the head of the snake. Wilson shook her head. We don't know where it is. Actually, Anna said, stepping forward, we might. She activated the room's holographic display, showing a map of nearby star systems. We've been analyzing the swarm's movement patterns and communication signals. All evidence points to a central control node in this system. She highlighted a star system at the edge of the map. That's deep in swarm territory, Wilson objected. We'd never get close enough. The Prometheus could, Wells said quietly. With the dimensional drive, we could slip past their defenses. Susan exchanged a look with Tom. Sir, the drive isn't stable enough for combat operations. We could maybe manage one more jump. But what? Wells prompted. Tom took a deep breath. Susan has been explaining more about the drive's capabilities. It could potentially be modified to create a dimensional rift inside the swarm's neural cluster. The room fell silent as everyone realized what he was suggesting. A suicide mission, Jack said finally. Wells nodded. It always was. We just didn't know it would take 3 centuries to complete. While the others continued planning the attack, Lisa made her way to the ship's main data core. As a historian, she had been granted access to the Prometheus's archives, hoping to learn more about the ship's origins. What she found shocked her. The Prometheus project was never meant to save humanity. She explained to Jack later, as they sat alone in a quiet corner of the mess hall. It was designed to preserve human knowledge and achievement after extinction was deemed inevitable. She showed him the original mission parameters on her tablet. This ship contains the most complete database of human culture, science, and history ever compiled. The crew was supposed to wait until the swarm had moved on, then find a suitable planet to restart human civilization. Jack stared at the document. They were meant to be the seeds of a new human race, not saviors of the existing one. Exactly, Lisa said. The Prometheus was humanity's time capsule, not its defender. Does Wells know? I think he's always known, Lisa replied. But he chose a different path. They all did. As repairs on the ship continued, Wells called Jack to his quarters. The captain looked worse each day, the radiation sickness taking its toll. His skin was pale, and his hands trembled slightly. I need to ask something of you, Wells said, his voice weaker than before. When we go after the swarm homeworld, and we will, someone needs to command this ship. Jack shook his head. That's your job, Captain. Not for much longer. Wells held up his hand to stop Jack's protest. We both know I'm dying. All of us from the original crew are. The radiation damage from the cryo chambers can't be reversed. He walked to the window, looking out at the stars. We were willing to give up everything for a future we would never see. That hasn't changed, but someone needs to carry on after we're gone. Jack stood beside him. I'm not ready to command a ship like this. No one ever is, Wells said with a small smile. But you understand both worlds, ours and yours. You can bridge the gap between past and future. Before Jack could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. Swarm ships detected. Anna's voice came over the comm system. Multiple vessels approaching the base. They found us. Wells straightened, pushing aside his weakness. Looks like our timetable just moved up. Battle stations, Commander Reed. It's time to see if your future was worth our sacrifice. As they hurried to the bridge, Jack glanced at the captain. Whatever happened next, he knew that humanity's last hope rested not just in the technology of this ancient ship, but in the will of its crew, past and present, to face impossible odds together. The Prometheus shuddered as another blast hit its shields. Around them, the hidden base burned, human ships fighting desperately against the swarm forces that had found their sanctuary. Shields at 43%, Anna reported from her station. We can't take much more of this. Captain Wells stood at the center of the bridge, somehow looking stronger despite his illness. In the face of battle, he had found new reserves of strength. "We're not going to stay and fight," he announced. "This is the moment we've been waiting for. The swarm has committed most of their forces to this attack on Earth. Their homeworld will never be more vulnerable." Jack looked at him in surprise. "We're jumping now." "But the drive isn't fully repaired." "It's repaired enough for what we need to do," Wells said. He turned to Susan at the engineering station. "Is the dimensional rift modification complete?" She nodded grimly. "Yes, sir. Once activated, we'll have approximately 10 minutes before the drive overloads and creates the rift. After that," she didn't need to finish. Everyone knew what would happen. Wells looked around the bridge at his crew, his original team from centuries past, and the new allies they had found in this time. "I won't order anyone to come on this mission. It's volunteer only." "I'm in," Jack said immediately. "Me too," Anna added. One by one, every person on the bridge volunteered. Tom, Susan, Lisa, all of them willing to make the ultimate sacrifice. Wells nodded, not surprised but clearly moved. "Send the coordinates to Admiral Wilson. Tell her to gather whatever forces she can spare and launch a diversionary attack. We'll need every advantage we can get." He turned to the helm. "Set course for the swarm homeworld. Prepare for dimensional jump." The jump took them to the edge of the swarm's home system. Unlike human space with its planets and moons, this system was a chaotic mess. The swarm had consumed and transformed everything here, creating massive organic structures around the central star. "My God," Lisa whispered as they looked at the sensor readouts. "It's like they've built a Dyson sphere." "Not built," Wells corrected. "Grown. The entire system is one massive organism now." The ship's AI highlighted one section of the structure. Sensor analysis indicates this is the location of the primary neural cluster, the command center for the entire swarm consciousness. Wells studied the display. "That's our target. Anna, plot a course that keeps us away from their defensive positions. Susan, how's the dimensional drive holding up?" "Stable for now," she replied. "But once we activate the rift sequence, there's no turning back." "Admiral Wilson reports her fleet is ready to launch their diversion," the communications officer announced. Wells nodded. "Tell her to begin, and may God be with them all." On the tactical display, they watched as the remaining human fleet appeared at the far edge of the system, immediately drawing the attention of dozens of swarm ships. "Now's our chance," Wells said. "Engage dimensional drive. Take us in." The Prometheus shimmered as it phased partially out of normal space. Even in its damaged state, the drive allowed them to slip past the outer swarm defenses undetected. But as they approached the heart of the system, the ship began to flicker back into normal space. "The neural cluster is affecting the drive," Susan reported, her fingers flying over her controls. "The psychic energy is interfering with our phase state." "Can you compensate?" Wells asked. She shook her head. "Not from here. Someone would need to go to the drive core and manually stabilize the field generators." Wells stood. "I'll go." "Captain," Jack began to protest, but Wells cut him off. "This is my ship, Commander, and my time is already running out." He touched the burns visible on his neck, evidence of the radiation poisoning. This is how it was always meant to be. Before anyone could stop him, Wells left the bridge, heading for the engine room. Deep in the ship, Wells worked quickly at the drive core controls. With each adjustment, the swirling blue sphere grew more stable, allowing the Prometheus to continue its approach to the swarm neural cluster. "How close are we?" he asked through his comm link. 2 minutes to optimal firing position," Jack's voice replied. "Drive stability is improving. Whatever you're doing is working." Wells didn't answer. He knew what needed to be done next. The final stabilization required direct contact with the drive core, a fatal amount of exposure to the dimensional energies. "Jack," he said finally, "I'm activating the rift sequence now. Once it starts, you'll have exactly 10 minutes to get the ship to safety." "What about you?" Jack asked, though he already knew the answer. Tell them. Wells paused. Tell them we kept our promise. After 300 years, we kept our promise. With those words, he locked open the safety barriers and stepped into the chamber housing the drive core. The blue energy engulfed him as he reached for the main control rod. Pain unlike anything he had ever experienced tore through his body, but he forced himself to focus. With the last of his strength, he pushed the control rod into position, fully activating the rift sequence. It's done, he whispered into his comm. Get our people home, Commander Reed. On the bridge, Jack watched as the captain's life signs flatlined on the monitor. There was no time to mourn. Drive core stable. Rift sequence initiated, Susan reported, her voice tight with emotion. 9 minutes, 40 seconds to full overload. Get us as close to the neural cluster as possible, Jack ordered. We need to be sure the rift forms in the right place. The Prometheus pushed deeper into the heart of the swarm system, now fully visible as the dimensional drive focused all its power on the coming rift. Swarm ships rushed to intercept them, but it was too late. 5 minutes to overload, Susan called out. We need to start pulling back now if we want to escape the blast radius. Jack hesitated. Someone needed to ensure the ship stayed on target until the very end. Everyone to the escape pods, he ordered suddenly. Now. Jack, what are you doing? Tom asked, alarmed. Finishing the mission, Jack replied. The ship needs to stay on course until the last possible moment. The rest of you can get clear in the pods. Anna stood from her station. That's not happening. We started this together. We'll finish it together. One by one, the bridge crew returned to their stations. 2 minutes to overload, Susan announced. The rift is beginning to form. Around them, the swarm ships scattered in confusion as space itself began to tear open near the neural cluster. A blinding light erupted from the growing rift, consuming everything it touched. 30 seconds. Susan's voice was calm despite everything. It's working. The neural cluster is being pulled into the rift. Across human space, the effect was immediate and dramatic. Swarm ships suddenly lost coordination, their attacks becoming disorganized and ineffective. The hive mind was dying. As the dimensional rift reached its full power, engulfing the entire neural cluster, the Prometheus made one final desperate jump away from the blast zone. The ancient ship, damaged beyond repair, limped back toward human space with its mixed crew of past and present. They had done it. At terrible cost, they had saved humanity. 6 months later, Jack stood on the observation deck of the new human settlement on Mars. The rebuilding was underway across all surviving colonies. The Prometheus was gone, too damaged to repair. But its technology and the knowledge stored in its database were revolutionizing human science. And most importantly, the swarm was defeated, reduced to scattered, mindless groups that posed no threat without their central consciousness. Captain Reed, the voice called. He turned to see Lisa approaching, carrying a small memorial plaque. It's ready, she said, for the monument. Jack read the inscription. For the crew of the Prometheus, who slept for centuries to save a future they would never know. Humanity remembers. As Jack looked up at the stars, he thought of Captain Wells and his crew, forgotten by history, until they returned to make history. Their sacrifice had given humanity a second chance, and Jack intended to make sure it counted.